Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the 18th anniversary of an event that changed India and the way we understand national security. It's, of course, 26/11, and it's not the worst terror attack to hit Mumbai. It was the second worst. I mean, those of you who lived through 1993 know the terror of those days. I see Shivanandan sir there, who's been through 1993 and 26/11. But 26/11 was a genre-defining event, and it is to the tribute of all our soldiers, civilians, Marine commandos, NSG personnel who fought so valiantly and carried the day. At the end of the day, they saved lives. There were heroic sacrifices. Everyone knows the case of Tukaram Momble, who grappled with Ajmal Kasab, and of course those lines that were spoken that night in Marathi. I think the most important lines spoken in Marathi that night, on the night of the 26/11, were "Hyala maru nako, hya evidence hai." It's a Mumbai police inspector who said that Kasab is not to be killed, he has to be taken alive because he is evidence. And because of that one line, Inspector Sanjay Govilkar's line, we got Kasab alive, and that whole conspiracy was uncovered. So this is the kind of hybrid warfare that India has been facing for several decades now. It's in fact one of the longest such instances of warfare any two countries have been engaged in. Right from our independence, 1947, we've been at the receiving end of hybrid warfare. And today that warfare is changing, and we're looking at a new frontier for that kind of war, which is the cyber domain. And I've just got back from Europe. In fact, I was there for a week, Germany first and Spain after that. And I must tell you that India is leagues ahead of Europe when it comes to digital physical infrastructure. The kind of advances that UPI has made, when you go to Europe, it's like you're literally 20 years, you're traveling 20 years in time. There's no concept of Paytm or UPI over there. I'm always reaching for my wallet or my credit cards or my, rupee cards. So it's like another world. And that just tells you how ahead of time India has been in all the critical investments that we've made in this digital physical infrastructure is remarkable. It's literally, a world leader in this aspect. But there's a flip side to this now. In the last couple of years, we've been seeing concerted attacks on our physical infrastructure, our digital infrastructure. We've seen attacks, cyber attacks on AIMS. We've seen cyber attacks on banks. There are literally 15 to 20% increase in these attacks on a yearly basis. And there seems to be some kind of a pattern to this. So while we talk about India having this digital India, this massive digital infrastructure that we've created, there's also the worry that non-state actors or malignant states could actually use cyber warfare to damage us without actually having a declared war. So we're going to talk about, with some of the very key stakeholders here, we're going to talk about what India really needs to do to counter these threats. And of course, my colleague Sumit Chaudhary is there with me. And Sumit Chaudhary, I must tell you very quickly before I move on to the panelists, he's possibly the only Indian defense reporter who has reported from Ukraine, from Russia, from Gaza, from Lebanon, Israel. He has been in every single combat theater. So he is not an armchair critic. He's not a podcast journalist. He is someone who's had his boots on the ground. So I listened to Sumit very carefully, and I think he's one of a kind in India. So it's truly an honor to be here with Sumit here today.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's take it forward then, Sumit. But I want to start by asking General Nair this question. General Nair, concerted attacks on our digital infrastructure over the last couple of years, is the dream of a digital India, could it be undone by these malignant attackers? Is there a pattern to all of these attacks? Do you believe that we're living in a NWNP, no war, no peace kind of scenario when it comes to cyber warfare?
Thank you, Sandeep. Sitting between two journalists who are hands-on, as Sandeep mentioned, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for me to explain to you on aspects related to cyber warfare. But firstly, let me thank Brahma Research Foundation for giving me an opportunity to interact with each one of you here. In the last session, in the last third national security conference which was organized, I somehow couldn't make it at that point of time, and I regretted that decision. So this time when Paresh approached me, I made sure that I'm here, despite the fact that we have a national cyber security exercise going on right now in Delhi, which has been organized by my organization, the National Security Council Secretariat, and it's going on at the CGO complex right at this point of time. Sandeep, the question which you raised, actually, I wanted to put it across that you heard the Vice Chief of Naval Staff mentioning to you about territorial, integrity, national sovereignty, when you actually consider it from a fact that you need to protect your land frontiers, the seas, the airs. But something which we generally don't discuss, we just as citizens of our country don't think about, is on security of the digital domain. Sandeep, extremely glad that you mentioned this, as also Mike. I think Mike mentioned this, that cybersecurity is something which we need to be all aware of, because it affects each one of us here as citizens of our country. Now, Sandeep just mentioned that he's been to Europe. Now, as Indians, I think we should be very proud of the fact that we have one of the largest digital public infrastructures in the world today. And it's growing so rapidly that it's amazing to see our remotest areas being connected through UPI and transactions being made. And it's a wonderful feeling when you see in a place like Campbell Bay, which is actually the southernmost village in the Indian Ocean region, in the South Andamans, you find people handling UPI. It actually gives you a feeling of eliteness, and it's something which we all should be proud of. We also need to be proud of the fact that one of the largest proliferation of 5G in the world today is in India. We have actually rolled down more than 5 lakh towers in the last 2 years plus 2 months, and that I think no other nation has achieved this particular target of rolling out the 5G services pan India or across the world. So if we are actually rolling out our digital services to a large extent, and all of us are connected to it, obviously there are vulnerabilities which will impact us as citizens, as a nation. And this is one of the primary reasons why we consider cybersecurity to be an integral part of national security today, since it connects each one of us as citizens, each one of the elements of the comprehensive national power about which we all think about now. Its comprehensive national power is a sum total of all elements of power which a nation can exercise for ensuring its sovereignty. And what connects all this is the digital domain. And that's where we need to protect it from adversaries, state actors, non-state actors, criminal elements. And that's why we felt that it's an integral part of any nation's security today. No, it's secure. Yes, there are a large number of steps being taken by the government today to protect its own cybersecurity effectiveness. But there are challenges to it, since we rolled out the digital ecosystem in a massive scale. And one factor we probably ignored is that there are challenges like this which will happen. So this is something which, Sandeep, and we need to keep protecting it. And to me, as a National Cybersecurity Coordinator, the landscape is such a challenge today that it's a major issue. And I make sure that every part of government, the industry, the academia, all of us citizens have to contribute to be part of it, to protect it. And that's how we can actually protect this particular domain, which is an important aspect of national security.
General Nair, you have mentioned that how the data consumption have been increasing day by day. Especially you have also mentioned that how government is creating new infrastructure, especially for the digitalization, for the cybersecurity. But the main question is there any filtration also to safeguard all these infrastructure? Is there any mechanism? If you can tell us what exactly government is doing something on the safeguarding cybersecurity, especially for the common people, because they are the most people who have been suffering because of these cyber attacks.
as I mentioned to Sumit, that it affects all of us as citizens. So there are a lot of initiatives which have been taken by the government. Now let's look at citizen-facing measures which have been taken by the government. I'm sure you're all aware of the I4C, which is the organization which is looking at protecting the citizens from cyber crimes. There is a national crime reporting portal which is there. There are 1930 is a measure which has been taken where you can actually lodge your complaint and make sure, it makes sure that they get back to you. But today the challenge in the ecosystem is that the technology is changing so dramatically every day that there are challenges in the cybersecurity ecosystem which probably the crime fighters, the law enforcement agencies are unable to catch up. They have an advantage of using technology on a much faster basis. The law enforcement agencies always have to catch up with it. So as citizens, what we need to be aware is to have the minimum cybersecurity hygiene practiced. Now that's something which we all need to learn as citizens of a country. Each one of us here are carrying smartphones. Now, are we aware of what should be the primary aspects of cybersecurity which we need to practice as a citizen? This is something which we need to be thinking about. Do we teach our children in schools, colleges, on what are the aspects, nuance of cybersecurity which can impact on all of us while we deal with a mobile device for doing our digital transactions? Are we making sure that there are adequate measures, checks and balances in the device itself? Like, have you updated your operating system? Is it an Android 12 version or previous versions, which doesn't have a support today? There are large number of agencies which are looking at this. The Department of Telecommunications have rolled out number of schemes like the Chaksu portal. There are a lot of initiatives taken to make sure that the cyber ecosystem is today protected, and the citizens who are facing the cyber crimes to a large extent are covered. And I must confess that the law enforcement agencies, as I had mentioned, are unable to tackle this issue to a large extent because they need to be technologically enabled in a much better manner, which is happening. The citizens need to be aware of it because they are the people who are actually affected by the cybercrime. They need to be aware. So we need to build up a cyber-aware citizen community. That's what we need to work on.
Absolutely. And General Nair, while you set the stage for us with that very expansive understanding of cybersecurity and how it actually starts from the citizens and it goes upwards to the government, I want to bring Burgess in on this because Burgess, you at E&Y, you look very closely at cybersecurity. Are the investments in cybersecurity made by the government and the private sector, are they commensurate with the kind of investments that we're making actually setting up the DPI, this digital physical infrastructure? Is there a mismatch between the two?
Sure, Sandeep. So thanks a lot. I think great opening comments. Clearly, as you mentioned, Digital India is a leading factor. We are so proud about UPI and the entire India stack. It makes us completely sort of proud. And as the earlier speaker mentioned, if we are going to be the third most powerful country from a GDPR perspective, we have to be secure. So the only thing which can actually impair our growth is cybersecurity. As an ex-CISO for 20 years and now practitioner for the last 10 years, has the security spending increased? Yes. Pre-COVID area and post-COVID, the number of attacks have increased, so have their ferociousness, so have the intensity, and more important, the damage they have done. However, as the attacks have increased, so has the awareness. Conferences like this, the media attention, laws, compliance drives lots of funding and sponsorship. Almost every CEO has cybersecurity as a top 5, if not top 3 on their risk lists. There are committees, there are mandates, there are regulations. So clearly the attention, the gravitas, the importance of security. India has a new DPDP Act on the basis of the European GDPR and the laws. So laws have increased, a certain mandate has happened. Has things improved? Clearly it has. Okay, is it necessary and not sufficient? Time will say. And the only way we can check that is we keep on doing practices, we keep on doing resilience, cyber war games, discussions, and keep on being ready for the next crisis.
Right. Cyber war games, interesting, as General Nair mentioned that it's underway even as we
So we
speak.
do lots of cyber war games with the C-class, with board members, and that's the only way a company or a corporate or government, and certain has this war game, I should play the telecom security. That's the only way, with resilience, keep on practicing till it becomes second nature.
Right, absolutely. Keep practicing till second
We
nature.
have also, Rajesh Thapar sir, we have been working very hard for the digital and especially for the cyber things, but still there is a lack or there is a deficit of trust in local people, especially the common people, on the safe and the secure technologies. Do you think that we need to more focus on these things, because if there is no trust between the common people, we are not going to enhance this digital mission for a very long period?
Thanks for that. So I think trust is the most important. I come from financial sector, so have been in exchange for 6 months. Prior to that, most of my time I had spent in banks. And banking and financial system is actually based on trust. Right, so there are two ways that trust can be built, and how do we mitigate it is something which will come over. So technically things can go wrong, things potentially are going wrong, that is what is leading to that trust. But if you see the root cause of what is going wrong, is it the main fence which is getting breached of organizations, or is it happening at the end point, which is the user? And again, taking a cue from what Sir was mentioning, it's actually the weakest link in this entire chain is less of the organizational perimeters or the systems or the controls are getting breached directly on the bank side or exchange side or any of the digital infrastructure side. Most of the time, these things are coming from authentication bypasses, which is giving the authentication credentials. Now, system on the back end doesn't understand who is on the other side. When you reach out with a communication and you give him all the code that is required, whether it's a secret, whether it's OTP, whether it's whatever is required, if you're handing over that information, the system on this side believes that you are on the right path. So I think the biggest difficulty that we have to overcome is making the citizens aware. So there are a lot of agenda items that go into the regulatory mandates. We see RBI ads, we see banks sending, we see exchanges publishing a lot of information. So, but despite that, we see there are certain target pockets which are still falling prey to it. The second thing which is making much more difficult is that all artificial intelligence and all, we are very happy to ingest and take it in on our side. As defenders, yes. And attackers are actually leveraging that equally good. So deepfake, which is actually making it much more difficult for a normal learned person who understands everything of cyber to really be questioning what he's seeing. Right? So there is an important leg that has to be built around how do we embed certain controls on those endpoints which are not in control of organizations. They are in citizens' controls. How do we build those layers of defense at that endpoint which can alarm him, alert him, and not let that get him impacted? One key initiative which I saw recently telecom sector took, and that's something being in a banking sector we were always requesting that to be taken up, is all those spam mails which actually become the first point of compromise for citizens. When you get a communication saying, boss, there are reward points to be made for you, there is an upgrade of credit card, for which the initial information, everything the victim shares, believing that is coming from a genuine guy. He shares his card number, he shares his PIN, he shares whatever is required, which is actually launching other attacks. Recently, some of the telecom entities have put in filters in their SMS gateways that any message that is getting delivered to the citizens will be passed through the DLT, which is the distribution ledger technology, saying that it doesn't match what this template should have been, which has actually reduced significantly those initial spams which are actually ending up on those endpoints, making the end user, a citizen, believe it's coming from the right source and establishes a trust path. So,
Burgess, you have been in this industry from last, I think, 25 years, more than 25 years, if I'm not wrong.
28.
28, I'm sorry, I apologize. But one thing is, we have discussed so many things that government is doing ads, they have been doing awareness campaigning, but there is a lapse or there is a gaps in the legal framework also. the law is not that much strict, which should be right now when we are moving so fast. So do you think we need to change on a legal framework as well? They need to do something on that?
Sure. So taking a cue from the earlier question, trust is the bedrock of all discipline and progress. Obviously, the framework has been improving. There have been mandates from certain. The DPDP Act has been there. It had multiple amendments, but all for the best. It's been passed. The law should come out soon. As technology is increasing, right, the bad guys use it for bad purposes, and so the good guys for the good purposes. Compliance drives lots of spending, and while the laws of the country will obviously have its own progress, I have seen a good motion being taken by the regulators. So RBI has done lots of stringent security controls, so has NCIPC, so has manufacturing and security controls. So surrounding regulations, whether it's for the power industry, which passed a security mandate a year and a half back, mandating audits, mandating awareness, RBI, and many other regulators have done. One important area to bring about is AI. Everyone is going to AI, it's impatient AI. Let me launch an AI because my neighboring company has launched it. An important factor to this is responsible AI. Okay, it has 9 pillars of security, privacy, ethics, transparency, responsibility, sustainability. So the part is when we all want to go launch AI for bad or good, but the responsible AI part is often missed. And the new India also, like the US passed an act on AI worldwide. India also has guidelines which will soon become an act and a regulation. But the AI guidelines are extremely important. They will be the future. Companies will take lots of progress. AI is innovation. But to keep it secure, the guardrails are important. And hence the responsible AI part is the need of the hour. And there are standards in India, there are guidelines, but the law should come soon, and that's the most important area for defense and for cybersecurity in the future, and privacy.
Absolutely. And Burgess, I want to actually take it back to the citizens. Now, while you mentioned the guardrails are important, but there's also a need for awareness. There is this new phenomenon, very worrying one, General Nair, about digital arrests, where seemingly very well-heeled people, their CEOs and businessmen have been digitally arrested, though there's no such concept like that. And they've been defrauded of crores of rupees. And in fact, my colleague Deepak Badana is here in the audience, and he's been tracking this very interesting phenomena, which is originating in Southeast Asian countries, where you have Chinese gangs that are capturing Indians, holding them hostage, and then getting them to act as, back-end operators to lure other Indians into this. That's one aspect of that. My question is that how do you, A, deal with these kind of transnational gangs who are sitting in foreign countries like Cambodia and Southeast Asia, and B, the awareness campaigns? We hear a lot about it. I mean, all our panelists have been talking about it, but we don't see the kind of in-your-face awareness campaigns. I mean, I see more awareness campaigns for a couple of years back for using public toilets when they were, inaugurated than I do for digital, cybersecurity. What's your take on this?
Sandeep, thanks for pointing out this particular issue. Now, there are 2 factors which influence this particular issue, which affects all of us. One is fear and one is greed. Now, these are 2 human emotions which are exploited by cyber criminals today. And cyber is a domain which doesn't follow any national, boundaries. It's a global phenomena. So like you had mentioned, there are international gangs. As I had mentioned, there are state actors, non-state actors, all of them involved in this particular game of crime, where human emotions are targeted. And since human emotions are targeted, we are all susceptible. At some point of time, we as citizens fall victims to such acts. To a large extent, senior citizens are impacted, as also children. I'm sure online gaming is another source of major fraud, which has been noticed across. Now, these are challenges. The way the government spreads awareness through multiple sector regulators. I'm sure you would have all seen RBI coming out with multiple notices on this particular thing. They have carried out social media campaigns, print campaigns, electronic media campaigns. We are trying to focus on school children, spreading the messages, the National Cadet Corps, the NCC students spreading the awareness. So a lot of initiatives. We'd also look at the industry to support us, the academia to support us in this endeavor. We're reaching out to every part of the country. But then it's an issue which affects each one of us, as I completely agree. And insofar as international cooperation is concerned, there are steps being taken by the government through bilateral agreements, through multilateral agreements, where governments are apprised on these challenges. So the challenge again is the legal framework about which you had mentioned. That's a challenge because every nation need not have common legal frameworks on aspects related to digital security. This is a challenge. We're trying to align through global bodies which are there, like the United Nations, have laws which are international laws which can across the board have an impact on citizens to see if they don't come under issues related to cybercrime impacted. There are a lot of Indian citizens who are losing their money through such cybercrimes, like digital arrest is one of them. There are so many other crimes which have actually happened in this domain. Now, again, just to point out that there are 1.1 billion devices within the country, connections, out of which 1.15 billion are actually wireless connections, and each of them have more than at least 10 applications which are there, apps, as you are generally aware. Now, do we look at what app do we download when we actually look at a smartphone today? Do we look at it whether it is a malicious app? So there are governmental initiatives where they tell you that, okay, you download this, certain has got an e-govt which is there. MeitY has come out with certain ventures like this. The app service providers, app platforms, app hosting platforms have certain precautionary guidelines which they are done. I'm sure, I think he just mentioned about one of the service providers now providing you with spam messages. I think when you actually get a call, it actually indicates on the mobile device itself that this is a spam call. So these are some of the initiatives which the government has taken to reduce vulnerabilities. One more issue, Sandeep, I just wanted to also mention is that hosting of data is another challenge which we have, where we need to make sure that the data of our citizens are stored in a secure manner. Now, we all talk about data on cloud, data on premise, etc. This is another challenge which you are trying to address this point of time to make sure that all your data, personal data, is protected, and that's where the DPDP Act, when it comes into effect shortly, I'm sure it will add to the measures being taken by the government to protect all of us.
General Nair, we are sure that government is doing everything, especially to reach out the people, especially to the private industries also. But there is still the shortage of 8 lakh professionals, of cyber security professionals. How can you able to handle all these shortages?
All right. I keep mentioning this at every forum like this, and I don't actually, this is one of the reasons why I come to the financial capital of our country, where I wanted to, request the industrial reps here that, we need to have cyber skilled professionals in this particular game. If we don't have skilled professionals handling your cyber security, no, cyber security is actually different from IT security. Now, you require specialists who can only deal with cybersecurity challenges, while the IT security actually establishes your network, etc. You need to have cybersecurity trained professionals to look at cybersecurity. One. Now, you need to carry out a risk assessment. The cybersecurity professionals need to carry out a risk assessment of your entire networks to see, are you protected? Then you need to carry out periodic audits. Now, these are some of the steps which the industry is expected to actually carry out, and there are stringent guidelines by the certain on this. Are there cybersecurity skills professionals today adequate? No, I'm sorry, we just don't have it. So how do we generate these skilled professionals? Now, we have a large number of computer science graduates coming out of our graduation programs in the country today. But are they trained adequately on cybersecurity? No. So we are actually working with the AICTE, the UGC, the national certification boards, etc., to make sure that there are dedicated cybersecurity programs at graduation. Professionals a little more skilled for at the post-graduation level, for focusing on specific sectors, like the financial sector requires one particular skill set for cybersecurity. So also, let's look at shipping and transport. They require a different one. The health sector requires a different set of cybersecurity professionals. So we are trying to have this done. It's work in progress at this point of time, but I'm sure over a period of time, in the next 2 to 3 years, I'm sure the country would be able to have few more of cyber skill professionals, but then we need to make it a national effort. And here again, the internship programs announced by the Prime Minister would actually assist in making sure that there are more cyber skill professionals who can actually work along with you and the industry for hands-on training. That's something which they all need to work on. Now, cybersecurity is something which cannot be practiced theoretically. It has to be hands-on. And that's where I would request again the industry here to support us by giving opportunities to the young interns to work on this domain.
Burgess, you want to come in on this?
Yeah, sure.
This point of the
So two
skill
parts.
gap.
Sir mentioned that it should be like a certification that's graduation. I'll take it a bit back. Just like we learn morals in school, physical education, I think cybersecurity should start at the grassroots level, right? Kids cyberbullying, good practices should start as early as preschool or school elements, so that people are cyber smart, cyber savvy. And the second part, you rightly mentioned, sir, that it's not theoretical, it has to be more practical. And hence, here the government and lots of companies are doing cyber hackathons, CTFs, capture the flag, where actual real-life hacking competitions are done. There's real-life challenges where IT professionals are motivated into thinking like a hacker so that you can outwit an hacker. You have to think like an attacker to outwit an attacker. And those challenges, those CTFs, those hackathons, there's one happening in a few weeks in Delhi at the DS event. Those actually challenge normal IT professionals to take up a security challenge, rise above it, and then think like an attacker and then thwart an attacker. Those two, grassroots level, at the higher end, CTFs and hackathons really help.
Right, absolutely. Thanks very much, Burgess, for putting that into perspective. Cybersecurity begins at home, as you put it very correctly, and it goes all the way up to the government, where General Nair comes in at the top level, and General Nair has to rush. So we'll have to wind up our panel here. He has to go back to Delhi and supervise that massive cybersecurity exercise that they're looking at. But thank you very much, my dear panelists, to talk to us today on this very burning issue that we are talking about, cybersecurity, because this is one aspect of national security that affects all of us, every single Indian citizen, 1.4 billion Indian citizens. Anyone who carries a mobile phone today is vulnerable to that, and that's why vigilance is the need of the hour. But thank you very much again for putting all that. Thanks.